Barpanat everyone! Over a month ago, a little game called Bluefire released, and a lot of Hollow Knight fans asked themselves a simple question. Should I, as a Hollow Knight fan, play this game? We're going to answer this question and more right now. Well, no, it's not. Okay, the real answer is it's kinda the next Hollow Knight. Okay, this whole discussion is kind of one step away from calling Hollow Knight the next Dark Souls. So yeah, the comparison itself is about as unstable as a president walking upstairs. While Bluefire is a metroidvania just like Hollow Knight, it is much more linear in its progression. And also it is, and the smartest of you might have noticed this already, in 3 dimensions and has a lot of elements that make it more akin to games like Zelda. Where else lie the connections then? I would say it is within the overall vibe of the game, the color scheme, the art style and the vocabulary. Okay, that sounds dumb, but I ensure it is actually really easy to explain. There are, for example, things to collect that are called void souls. Yeah, like, do I even need to go on and explain why this reminds me of Hollow Knight? And that is one of a dozen examples of Bluefire using similar power sources or metaphors in its dialogue and lore. So to sum up this segment, the similarities are here for Hollow Knight fans and especially for Zelda fans to enjoy this game. We'll get into why a bit later. So now let's take more of a deep dive and take a look at the single pieces of the game and see if Bluefire is leaving us cold or is really lit. And yes, I immediately regret writing this into the script right now. What am I even thinking? I take a 2-month break from YouTube and this is what I return with? Anyway, let's start with how the game is set up. So basically you are this mute little dude thing that is the only one who can save the world from an infection-like disease that is spreading throughout the world. To achieve that you have to kill some corrupted gods and finally also another boss that never got out of their My Chemical Romance phase apparently. The game itself is split into different parts. 1 or 2 normal areas to traverse through and then a dungeon. So this will remind a lot of you of The Legend of Zelda, for example. This cycle repeats a few times and this kind of pace feels really good. But it is only kept up until the second half of the game, which feels significantly shorter because it throws boss after boss at you, mostly without dungeons or even areas to explore, but instead with some backtracking. I immediately got Skyward Sword PTSD playing through the latter half of the game. It kind of feels as though the devs ran out of time when designing the second half of the game. But I do have to say that the second half is saved by a thing we'll talk about in a bit. Even with this shorter second half though, there's still a sizable game here with about 20 hours of gameplay. This gameplay consists mostly of platforming, mixed with some combat that doesn't really feel balanced enough that the fights actually feel good. It just feels kinda clunky and outside of some great boss fights, just not really fun. This cannot be said about the movement though, which is, hands down, the single best thing about this game. The movement is incredibly fun to pull off. It gradually builds up and becomes better and better with every upgrade, but I would go as far as to say that the movement alone carries the late game with ease. See, Bluefire has a similar system to Hollow Knight's charms, but imagine that each charm only costs 1 notch and that around 50% of charms advance your movement. This leads to the player being able to pull off longer, higher and simply more jumps and dashes, and spin attacks, which is an optional move that makes combat and movement feel much better. I cannot stress enough how fun this feels, because for the most parts, the game allows you to play around in this world and really use these upgrades to your advantage. Bluefire is very much focused around movement, with the only way to upgrade your health being that you beat hidden platforming challenges called voids. These challenges are fun and feel really thought out, and even the second easiest one is already harder than anything that ever made it into Super Mario Odyssey, which has nothing to do with this video, but I just wanted to point out how freaking easy that game is. That said, the aforementioned charm-like upgrades allow the player to string together quite incredible tasks that often lead to one being able to cheese the challenges, given you are creative enough to find ways to do that. Furthermore, this also leads into the second biggest strength of Bluefire, the world and its exploration. While the main story itself is very linear, the quests are, even though they are very fetch questy, still interesting in their execution. There are many secrets hidden everywhere to take advantage of the moveset, and are not possible to get to with the base moveset, so the charms, as I call them, come in handy. Those are mostly gotten by finishing said side quests or finding them hidden in the world. As I said before, the side quests themselves are quite fun. You could say some of these side quests could push one over the edge. Literally. Anyway, I really enjoyed when I find a secret and I don't know what the reward will be. Money, a platforming challenge, a NPC, an item, a charm. This keeps exploration fresh. Finding every nook and cranny in this game is fun. Almost as fun as emotes. Emotes are weird. They are gimmicky statues all around the world that need 200 ore to activate and give you an emote which you can use on platforms that show said emote on it to unlock a chest on another platform. And at first this feels really detached from the main game, and it kind of is. But it does work in its favor, especially with one secret, my favorite secret in the game to be honest, which wants the player to use movement in a close to out of bounds way, and it's kind of bananas honestly. I know that in this review I did not touch on every aspect, because some aspects left me quite indifferent or with not a lot to say about them. For example, the okay story and the good music and the dialogue. They are all just fine. I do have to talk about my biggest gripe of the game though, the performance and bugs. Now, all of these problems I'm going to point out are going to be fixed in the future, maybe even already have been fixed in the time since I last played this game, which was around a month ago. This game crashed on Switch more often than Cyberpunk did when I played it on the PS5. Especially in the late game, fast traveling kind of felt like throwing dice. Either you come out alive and get to where you wanna be, or the Switch turns on you and kills the game. This alone and the sometimes really subpar frame rate are not bad at all though. The main problem was me not being able to achieve completion. But what does this mean? Well, thanks for asking, dear viewer, and that's how you all sound in my head. Remember the voids I mentioned? Even though I completed them all, some of them did not register as completed in the menu. And even if I redid them, it all just did not work, and obviously did not count towards my completion percentage, which now sits at 92% with every main quest and side quests done and all the voids done. Another problem is that some of the main quests are still marked as not completed, such as visiting the first dungeon in the game. This is so weird to me. I do not want to check in every few days and see if the problem has been solved yet, because I think having these problems in the first place weeks after the release is enough to deduct points from the game for this. But if you pick up the game right now, chances are that most of these problems are patched out already. So in the end, is Bluefire the next Hollow Knight? No. I don't think it will leave a huge impact on the indie community, to be terribly honest. Although I think that the speedrun community will have a field day with this game, because it's really nice to just move around in it. However, I do think that this game is worth playing, and it certainly scratches the itch that everyone wants to scratch that clicked on this video. This game, on a scale from 0 to 10, gets a light 7, due to its technical issues and shortcuts in the latter half of the game, which feels like it's only a third. The movement, exploration and vibe of the game, however, are extraordinarily good and make this a game that is definitely worth playing if you're into this sort of game. This video was made possible by my wonderful Patreons. Here they are. You can also become a Patreon for just $1. Also, please stick around if you enjoyed this video and if you like Hollow Knight and Hollow Knight Silksong, because I got videos about those games in spades. That said, I will see you hopefully soon in the near or far or semi-near or semi-far future, and not in another 2 months. Until then, stay safe and bye Panada.